Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Squadron Leader Guri Singh. Today marks the 70th anniversary of the armistice that brought the Korean War to a halt. The Korean War began on the 25th of June 1950, when the North Korean People's Army launched a large-scale offensive across the 38th parallel into South Korea. Over the next 3 years, the war would rage the length and breadth of the Korean Peninsula and would cost over 2 million lives. 21 member nations of the United Nations, including Australia, sent combat or medical units to assist South Korea maintain its sovereignty. In July 1951, negotiations for an armistice began at Kaesong, but negotiations were suspended when the building in which the negotiations were to take place was bombed in August. Talks resumed 2 months later at Panmunjom, but were protracted after the death of Russian leader Joseph Stalin in March 1953. At 10 a.m. on the 27th of July 1953, delegates from both sides signed 18 copies of the 2-volume armistice points, and the armistice came into effect 12 hours later. Over the following days, both sides withdrew 2 kilometres from their frontline positions, creating the demilitarised zone, which still stands to this day. Around 17,000 Australians served in Korea between 1950 and 1953, of which 340 were killed, over 1,500 wounded, and 30 taken prisoner. A further 16 lost their lives during armistice enforcement operations. Today, we pay our respects to those commemorated on the Roll of Honour and to the survivors who returned home. Shortly, we will recall the story of Flight Lieutenant Craig Kirkpatrick, who lost his life while serving in the Korean War. This evening, we are honoured to acknowledge Colonel Kim Jin-boo, representing His Excellency Won Jung Kim, Ambassador of the Republic of Korea to Australia, and the accompanying delegation. We warmly welcome veterans of the Korean War and their families in attendance. Mr. John King, President of the Returned and Services League of Australia, ACT branch, and Group Captain Mac Cottrell, retired, representing the Air Force Association. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Club Association. We welcome members who are watching this ceremony broadcast across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of Runcorn State School from Sunnybank, Queensland. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Thank you. If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Flight Lieutenant Craig Kirkpatrick. Craig Kirkpatrick was born in Melbourne on the 4th of February 1924, one of 3 children, and the only son born to First World War veteran Hugh Kirkpatrick and his wife Frances. He grew up in a loving family, and he was close to his sisters Joanne and Nancy. He attended St. Mark's Church, Camberwell, and was an excellent student. On the 9th of November 1934, the family was rocked by the death of Craig's mother. His father continued to raise the children, ensuring they had as stable a life as possible. Craig attended Camberwell Grammar School, gaining first-class pass marks in arithmetic, geometry and trigonometry, geography, commercial principles, and practice. He then took an accountancy course before going on to work as a production clerk with the Commonwealth Aircraft Factory. After the outbreak of Second World War, Kirkpatrick enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force on the 10th of October 1942. He was accepted for pilot's training, which he successfully completed in July 1943 before being granted a commission. Having completed the Empire Air Training Scheme Service Instructors course, Kirkpatrick instructed pilot trainees on Wirraway aircraft for 12 months. After this, he returned to training and qualified on Beaufort bombers and Beaufighter aircraft. Kirkpatrick embarked for Morotai on the 8th of September 1945 and joined number 22 Squadron at the end of the month, carrying out ferrying and escort flights to southern bases. By the end of the war, Kirkpatrick had become an experienced pilot, having flown a variety of trainer aircraft, Beaufort bombers, Beaufighters, and Mustang fighter aircraft. In January 1946, he was posted to number 93 Squadron RAAF and began flying Beaufighters on escort duties to Japan. He returned to Australia in late 1946 and then, choosing to remain in the Air Force, was posted to a target towing and Navy cooperation squadron. In the following years, he posted to Air Force headquarters and, after completing an intelligence officer's course, was posted to Northwestern Area Headquarters. On the 23rd of September 1948, Kirkpatrick was granted a short service commission. In February 1950, he was posted as intelligence officer to number 77 Squadron, based at Iwakuni in Japan. While the Korean War began on the 25th of June 1950, number 77 Squadron was in the process of farewelling Japan for a return to Australia. Instead, the aircraft were unpacked, and Kirkpatrick flew his next operation within weeks. He completed the RAAF Staff College qualifying examination on the 27th of July. At the beginning of September, was granted a permanent commission. His squadron continued supporting the UN advance into North Korea. It moved to Pohang in Korean Peninsula in early October. By this stage, Kirkpatrick had flown 10 operations against ground targets and earned himself a reputation as a fearless pilot. At around 4 a.m. on the morning of 14th November, the tent occupied by Kirkpatrick and Flight Lieutenant William Gray caught fire due to an electrical fault. The tent they were in burned down to the ground. Both men suffered extensive burns and were flown to 118th United States Army General Hospital at Fukuoka in Japan. Sadly, Kirkpatrick's wounds proved mortal. He died that day. He was 26 years old. Flight Lieutenant William Gray, aged 32, succumbed to his injuries on the 20th of November. Both men were laid to rest at Yokohama War Cemetery. The epitaph on Kirkpatrick's headstone reads, "Beloved son of Hugh and Frances, loved brother of Nancy and Joanne." Kirkpatrick was posthumously awarded a United States Air Medal His citation reads in part, Flight Lieutenant Craig Kirkpatrick performed acts of meritorious service while participating in sustained operations in support of United Nations activities in Korea. He participated in 10 operational flights. In the course of these operations, dive bombing, rocketing, and strafing runs were made from dangerously low altitudes, destroying and damaging enemy installations and equipment. Kirkpatrick's father, who had been in hospital with a long-term illness, was deemed too ill to hear of his son's death. He did not recover and died in December 1952. Craig Kirkpatrick's name is listed on the Roll of Honor on my left among the 340 soldiers, sailors, and airmen who died as a result of their service during the Korean War. A photo of Flight Lieutenant Kirkpatrick alongside a group of other Royal Australian Air Force personnel is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Flight Lieutenant Craig Kirkpatrick, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub of Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.